invite... No, extraordinary business. There is no extraordinary business. And we will invite Tim and Rod. Or was it Rob? No, Rob's here today. Yep. Yep, we've got a mover and a seconder for this already. Right.
Well, actually, Lotu has pretty well described what the proposal is. So unless there's a desire for us to go through the report, I'm happy to take it as read and just answer any questions.
We will take it as read. We will take it as read. Councillor Newman.
Thank you. I intend to support this item, but I do have some questions around the OLI process and how this fits into the OLIs, as well as the process generally. So your report indicates that at para 36, the capital shortfall is proposed to be funded from existing budgets, fine, by reallocating OLI program funding. Can you tell me what opportunity cost is paid by a reallocation of the OLI program funding? Because this was not in the original OLI's list, this is new. So what pays for this?
So the intent is that this would come out of the OLI 200 million OLI envelope. At this stage, without the business case work on each of the OLIs, we can't identify exactly what's not going to be funded as a result of this additional money, but it will be, as we know, the complete allocation of that OLI budget across the OLI projects has not been defined in detail as yet.
I understand that we don't have a resolution for all the other OLIs yet, so does this OLI sit with all the other OLIs at the start line for a consideration through a business case and all the other gateways, or is this ahead of them and receiving funding that will need to be reallocated to it?
It is the latter. The business case has been completed. This is an advanced. This project is more advanced than most of the other OLI projects.
When will I understand that a report is coming to the Environment and Community Committee soon on a gateway assessment undertaken by staff for OLIs. So will that gateway assessment provide any clarity as to what funding will need to be allocated, or actually what we will need to drop because it apparently doesn't achieve the gateway tests set down by staff?
The report that's coming will not answer for the full program all those questions. So each of the projects is at a slightly different phase in the business case process. Yeah. So to the extent where there is answers from the indicative business cases, they will be provided. Some of those projects are still in those early stages. So it'll be a rolling, those answers will roll out as the individual projects are advanced through the business cases.
And we've also, Councillor Newman, we've ensured that every quarter now in the quarterly report to Finance F&P, there will be a financial update which really answers your question on the OLI program, and it is a rolling review, so to speak. Member Tapu.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman, ka nui te me, kia koro I tēnei wā. Just because the recommendation is about, well, 1.5 million allocation, but curious to know where the 6 million is coming from for the marae shortfall.
Councillor, so the 6 million will be sought by the marae from external funders, Foundation North and Department of Internal Affairs, the primary places where we've looked. So the board has funded the design and consenting phase of the marae, and then once that's complete, they'll have the package which they need to apply for that external funding. So we're not looking for funding for the construction phase of the marae.
There's a description of income generation for multi-sports facility. Where's that coming from? Is it anything else other than the laundry?
So the laundry and also the club room, the bar in the club room. But primarily it's the laundry. So the laundry will be used by clubs, all the sports teams, and also by the marae, sheets and towels and so forth. So there'll be significant demand on site for the laundry, but also it'll be available to the public, to general public. So it's anticipated that it'll be quite well used, which will help with safety and security on site by just increasing presence and number of people on site.
Is there an expectation that the marae will be rented out to the community?
The marae will be managed as it is now, that it's open to community groups or community uses for whatever purpose.
Would there be an expectation from the revenue from that rental for the marae to go towards the multi-sport facility?
No, so the marae will lease the land from council and they will own the building themselves, so that their building and all costs and revenue will go to them, to the marae.
Thank you.
Councillor Philippa.
The question is based on number 9 of the report. So when Otara Papatoetoe came through during the 2018-2028 long-term plan, can you confirm that their one initiative or their OLI was the $280,000, their commitment around Collindale Park?
Yes, I can confirm that was their OLI, was effectively the cost of servicing the debt.
And can you also confirm that that particular money, if the local board hadn't put that forward, that Collindale Park, and especially around the earthworks, would not have happened?
That's my understanding, that at that time the requirement to bring the money forward to fund that early work was contingent on the board servicing the additional debt cost.
And also, and again, this is going to be a tricky question, but can you also confirm that if it hadn't put the money in, nothing would have been done, and the responsibility was Auckland Council's responsibility, and they just picked up what the council should have done?
You can answer yes.
Yes. So, can I just say, so that the Collindale Park was at that stage a local park, so it needed to be funded somehow.
I think the answer is yes, Councillor Philippa.
And just the last question, can I ask a question of yourself, Chair?
Yeah.
Chair, as a result of the monies that they ended up paying, that the original OLI process that they had put through with the 280,000, that they were advised to look for another OLI because this particular one was something that the region was going to pick up, as in the fund was going to be picked up, because, yeah, I mean, I know that I sort of spoke to them.
Over 18 months, myself and Christine Watson, who was actually in charge of that program, went back consistently to Lotu and said, you really don't need to put this up. Are you sure you want to? And we do have an email, and we do have a final email after the third attempt where she said, no, we want to put this up as our OLI. So that was it.
So I reserve my right to speak, Chair, because I can understand why the local board did, but I think it's important that it gets explained when we get into the debate and discussion.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got Councillor Bartley and Councillor Casey with questions, and then whatever discussion is required. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you for bringing the report. Are you satisfied that the mitigation is enough to ensure the site is safe for the users of the park?
Councillor Bartley, so you're talking about the mitigation against the methane gas?
Yes.
Yeah, so our investigations have detected quite low levels of methane, which are travelling horizontally underground from the landfill. Apparently this is quite common. It's not a problem at the moment. We're still identifying the worst case, and the worst case is in the driest time of the year, which is now, when there's a low pressure system overhead, which we're waiting for because we've only had high pressure systems for the last 6 months or for 3 or 4 months. So in the worst case, we will measure the gas readings then, and at that point we'll be able to determine what mitigation we need to do. But we're assured that we can mitigate against it. It's not a problem. It's just deciding how far we need to go to mitigate. But our consultants assure us it can be done. It's if you understand, that the building is there now, the same problem is there now, and it has been for years. This is sort of taking it a step further in terms of protection against this gas. But yes, we think we can.
Councillor Casey.
My question's along the same lines as David's, and that was the external funders. In the report, it says that external funders have confirmed their interest. And you mentioned Foundation North and the government. Is there anybody else expressed an interest, just in case the budget doesn't stick at the $6 million level when the tenders come in?
So we've held meetings with the two funders that I talked about, Foundation North and DSI, DIS. They've indicated they would be interested in funding the marae, but they haven't confirmed that they would, and nobody is prepared to confirm that they would until we've completed detailed design and consenting. And in fact, we need to go as far as building consent phase before anybody will be interested in actually confirming their funding. So at this stage, it is unfunded, and until such time as we've got fully documented and consented plans, we can't start that funding application round.
So are there any other external funders that will be approached to assist with the project?
Those are the two key ones as far as I'm aware, but it's not actually my field of expertise, but that's as far as I'm aware, they're the main ones.
Councillor Watson. Okay, right, well you can speak, no more. Go ahead. Yep, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about this application for the allocation of 1.5 million for this OLI. Obviously, where the local boards are getting one project for the next decade, it's fairly important that the project they choose is one of significance and benefit to their community. I don't know if they all fall under that category or not, but this one certainly does. So I'm glad to see the Otara Papatoetoe local board have pursued this, because I can remember in the last term of council, a couple of gentlemen submitting to the long-term plan, I think it was, from the Otara Scorpions, who were talking about having to turn young people away out at Otara because they didn't have the facilities to cope at the ground, and certainly, as you saw, with the changing rooms that have been masquerading as their club rooms. When I think back to Ngāti Otara in the late 70s, they had their own cricket club, they had lovely grass wickets, they were quite a thriving club. I don't think there's that cricket now. There's certainly Kilikiti and a bare concrete pitch, which I understand supports that they're quite content with the concrete pitch for playing Kilikiti, but it would be nice if there was maybe an AstroTurf on that as well. They're pretty basic facilities as we saw, and I guess from my perspective, these sorts of projects are the ones that are important, and I think there's been a tendency in this council for the kind of the lower end of town to struggle. A lot of clubs are struggling. They're really struggling, either because they can't cope, they've got too many people wanting to use their facilities, or they're trying to hang on. Either way, it's not a good picture. We know that things have changed a lot in recent decades in terms of investment. We have all the money. If you think of the rugby league, and the Scorpions were mentioned. Scorpions have lost good players over the years because they haven't been a premier club. They've struggled to retain their membership. Good players go elsewhere. And in communities like this, and indeed a lot of the communities that rugby league clubs function in, the club performs a real social function too, in terms of providing a code, providing discipline, providing a way forward, providing a sense of community pride. It's a bit hard to have that if you're wandering down to a bit of a dump, and that's with wind and rain blowing through in the winter. It's hardly a premier location. So from my point, I would like to see us look more at these sorts of investments across the board, because they're the ones that have a real benefit to the local communities right across Auckland. We saw that if you read your letter from Auckland Cricket. They support 16 clubs right across Auckland. So the references during the debate of Eden Park to the cruisy financial deal Auckland Cricket's on. Well, really, all their money goes back into those 16 clubs from all parts of Auckland. Similar with Auckland Rugby League. That's why it's good to see them involved with the Warriors franchise now, because hopefully some of that money will get back to the people who need it and into facilities like that. So I just hope, Mr. Chair, that this program proceeds apace. It's well overdue, and from my perspective, I'm perfectly comfortable, in fact, keen to be involved in this sort of development with council resources rather than grandiose plans for third parties who are not even resident in Auckland. Give it to the people who need it. That's our local communities like Otara and the Otara Scorpions and the other codes that will be using this.
I think this is going to pass unanimously, but Member Hinari.
Just to, this is where I was brought up. I have a long affiliation in my first 25 years with Ngāti Otara. To blow my own trumpet, I played for the Otara Cricket Club when we had the best grass wicket around. It brings back huge memories for me. The Lawese family, the Collinses. We had a team modelled on the West Indies. One Māori, one Pākehā, and the rest Samoans. This is. I totally agree with what Councillor Watson has said, it's a bit of a shame, really, to see a concrete pitch where I played around. I was a caretaker of the marae in my unemployed days. Planted lots and lots of sunflowers around the original building. That whole area is built on a dump. So when you say that, we'd be walking down to a dump, it actually literally was a dump. The school I went to, which borders the playing fields, Hillary College, it's not named Hillary College anymore, it's also built on that landfill, on that dump. I have two, I suppose, not questions, but issues. One is the seeping methane out of the dump, and I don't know how you look after that. I'm not a scientist. And secondly, my worry is that we'll have this great sports complex, and they deserve it. Otara deserves it, but I wouldn't want a half-built marae. And I know that there are funding streams available, and I suppose my wish is that council gets in behind 100% in making sure that they support every funding application of the marae wherever and whenever to get that project done. I know the marae itself has a kohanga attached to it, and because of I suppose the environment of early childhood, there's lots of choice out there for the community of Otara, and so it's a competing business, I suppose, the kohanga and early childhood. There's lots and lots of stuff. I could talk for hours and hours about Otara. I totally give my 100% support for the sports complex. We've had guys like Vern Wilson come out of the Scorpions, the baby-faced assassin, out of that little concrete. And it was a toilet block. I remember it was a toilet block, and it got converted into a club rooms. And we were always getting the hand-me-downs when I was growing up there, and it's still the same. you know, and if it's one thing that this council could do to say, yeah, we love Otara just as much as we love the peninsula where I live at the moment or wherever else, it's this little project here. And it is small compared to a whole lot of other projects going around Tamaki at the moment. So I just wanted to put that on the record that I'm still 274 hard.
Right, well, we have an amendment foreshadowed. I think we should put that up first, and move on to a discussion of that amendment, which has been put up.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I totally support this. I think that we do love all communities, but we tend to love different communities a little bit more than some. And I think, frankly, in Otara there hasn't been enough love regionally than there should have been previously. And I'd like to think that in making commitment to fund this Māori sport, which is long overdue, that will be a good gesture. It is a wholly good thing to do for the poorest, least resilient community in Auckland, arguably. My concern, Chair, is that this item is a little bit ahead of the annual plan discussion. This was not a project that was identified as a One Local initiative. You have given a reflection, Chair, and I have acknowledged your reflection about this, the communication with the Chair of the Otara Papatoi Local Board. This is in addition to that. I think that's good. My concern is the opportunity cost, and I have been attending workshops with the local boards in my ward, and the discussion around the Ollies looks extremely unhelpful to local boards, frankly. There are a lot of gateways where these Ollies need to pass. If you don't pass through the Ollies, you'll find that your Ollie might exist on paper, but what comes out at the back end will be rather different. And it is, I think, an exercise which is frustrating. It will frustrate the aspirations that Councillor Watson talked about. When you sit down with the local boards and you hear their reflections about how their Ollies are being presented back to them as they try and get them through the gateways, I'm worried. And I could speculate that this is an exercise in trying to pare back the cost. I'm not going to assign that reason because I'm sure that there's a desire for good public policy making. But my concern here is that we made a commitment to the local boards for the Ollies, and we need to be able to deliver that, and we need to protect the budget envelope for that aspiration. So what I'm doing here, Chair, is I'm seeking to expand the envelope by 1.5 million, and then to allocate the 1.5 million expanded to accommodate this Ollie, therefore not imposing an opportunity cost on the other Ollies, which still need to go through the gateway process. And so I support the aspiration, but I just want to protect the other Ollies as well, because the local boards are nervous. And I thank Councillor Fletcher for seconding.
Right. As Chair of Finance, I've just got to respond, I suppose. It's a shame that I understand the frustration over the Ollie program. It's a shame that it's been considered a failure because everyone thought it was a great success, and I think it will still be a great success, but there's no question there's a whole lot of the projects are going through the business case stage, the planning. I would have thought by the next LTP, to be quite honest, it could be coming back. We're going to have a firmer fix on the actual real costs on most of the Ollies, and it could be that that's part of what a mayor, the next mayor, this mayor, whatever, will come back with consideration to be looking at that budget if necessary. And to be honest, it's probably going to be necessary to be quite open about that. Councillor Newman and Councillor Fletcher, it would be better if this was referred to the annual plan process rather than just put on at a one-off like this, if we could. But you've put it up, so I can't do anything about it. But we would prefer, and I'm hearing it from Nicola next to me as well, we would prefer that it was referred to the annual plan for the due consideration there. But you've put it up. So we've got Councillor Bartley next, Councillor Filipina, and then Meg off.
Chair, just from a process perspective, are we now discussing this amendment?
Yep.
Okay, look, I questions then. If this goes through, what happens with the Ngāti Otara Park and the work that needs to be done if this goes through? Because are we going to wait for the 1.5 million? Because my understanding was in your comment earlier, Chair, was that the $1.5 million, if it had gone through prior to this amendment, was going to come out of that Ollie bucket. It was, eh?
Yep, that's correct.
But now we may end up waiting again for the Ngāti Otara, the people in Otara to wait again to end up finding that $1.5 million, whether it goes through the annual process. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yep. It would be better to go with the original motion in
Well,
order to
and-
make sure
yeah.
it gets off the ground straight away.
Chair, because again, and I acknowledge Councillor Watson with the words that he said prior to all this around the Otara community waiting so long. We now have an amendment that will then delay possibly that multi-sports complex from being built. And that is my concern. So can somebody tell me whether, gentlemen, that won't happen? Because if that's the case, I mean, because Councillor Newman has assumed that this is being pushed ahead of the Ollie process that's coming up. That's what I'm hearing. And we ended up finding out that, in fact, the original recommendation was and should have been the local board's Ollie when we were discussing it at the long-term plan. And am I correct in saying that?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Chair, we've got an amendment up here that now is assuming that they're preempting the next Ollie process when, in fact, it is wrong. I will not be supporting this. It's now waiting. The Otara community and the assumption that's been made is a wrong assumption because, as you pointed out, Chair, the Otara Papatoetoe local board, they were asked, but I could understand why, they wanted that Ollie to continue because they didn't have any confirmation from their perspective. And I was going to talk about that when we ended up discussing it. So, Chair, sorry I didn't have a question, but I had a few. But now that I know that the assumption from Councillor Newman, seconded by Councillor Fletcher, is the wrong assumption, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
You did actually ask a question there, and the question was that the local board did not quite have the faith that we would pass that, so hence they stuck with it. That's why they stuck with it. It should have been there earlier. Yep. Councillor Bartley.
I actually wanted to speak to the original.
Okay, right, that's fine.
Oh, I can't now?
Meg off the amendment or the original?
I'll speak to the amendment. I'll just make it clear right at the beginning, I'm absolutely in favour of spending this money on Ngāti Otara. We say that we are for an inclusive city, and this is I've been there, I've looked at it, it still looks like a toilet roll toe. It hasn't changed much. They paint it nicely and it looks good. But if we're going to have an inclusive city where we try to equalise opportunities, we need to invest in a really important sports facility like that. I think everybody's agreed on that. The question is, do we need the amendment? And I'd just ask Councillor Newman just to contemplate whether we actually need it. To me, you know, if we start moving amendments to each item to say we'll spend more here, more there, more somewhere else, without doing it within the context of the annual budget, I think we're in real trouble. We don't know yet whether the Ollies are going to be underspent or overspent. If there is a real problem, then I might be sympathetic to increasing the Ollie by that amount. if it were to come at the expense of another local board area, but that's not clear at the moment. And process-wise, we're dealing with the annual budget in just over a month, 22nd of May. We should deal with it within that context. So you see the spending proposals across the board and you can weigh them up one against the other. It is incredibly poor process to ad hoc, without notice, put in an amendment, spend more money here, more money there. This morning we could have, we were talking about a proposal, nobody mentioned it, but that actually was a proposal on one of the public inputs that would have cost several $100,000 to council. You can't run the organisation by making ad hoc decisions, foregoing income there, spending more there, and then wondering how you balance the budget and whether you're going to put all this impost on top of the ratepayer. So could I ask the mover and seconder of that whether they would consider actually transferring this for discussion within the context of the annual budget on the 22nd of May. That is good process. That's how we'd normally do it. That's when we've had time to think about it, not making an off-the-cuff ad hoc decision here without seeing it against all of the other proposals that we need to consider. I'm not in favour of the amendment. I am strongly in favour of ensuring that we can build this multi-sport facility in Ngāti Otara.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. In agreeing to second this amendment, it was not in any way to prevent the urgent expenditure on what is a long overdue facility. So can I make that quite clear? The concern is those of us who are working within individual ollies will realise that there's quite a bit of frustration with the process. Yeah. And I in no way wish to be disrespectful to what you are trying to achieve, Mr. Chairman, with the ollie process. However, I think it's fair to say that there is a risk that some of the proposals could be compromised, and just working as one individual elected member trying to do a deep dive into the ollie process and trying to understand how one actually progresses them, it does strike me as potentially an impediment. I respect what the Mayor is saying in terms of using the opportunity in May for evaluating all of the ollies and looking at all of the issues. But this, as I take it, and I'd be interested in Mr. Cairns giving clarification, there is nothing in what is being proposed here that I can read that says that this should delay Ngāti Otara's multi-sport and cultural centre proceeding. I wonder if Mr. Cairns could just confirm that.
So just with regard to what the amendment implies, I might be incorrect in reading that to say the 1.5 billion is allocated to this project and that the ollie envelope is expanded by 1.5 million.
So in that scenario, it would still have the same sense of urgency as the original motion.
Yeah, so my interpretation of that would be all we need in terms of to advance the project is confirmation of the project budget.
So my understanding of what Councillor Newman is seeking to achieve here is he is trying to preserve the integrity of the ollie process and those ollie bids that have been put in good faith by the local boards. So I think we're in danger of sort of splitting. Sorry, somebody was speaking to my right. What I'm wanting to be quite clear about is that this is not going to slow the process down, but it is highlighting the fact that there will be potentially a shortfall in the ollie budget. So this is a matter that needs to be discussed in May, but by foreshadowing that now, it's giving officers an opportunity to ensure that that is going to be an allocation that will need, provision will need to be made for it. So I think it's quite a prudent step, and I hope that others can support it.
Could I just raise a point of order and ask the mover and the seconder whether they would be prepared, just to amend the wording a bit, refer to the annual budget discussions in May, a proposal to expand, so that we do it within that context. Otherwise, we're doing this in an ad hoc way without notice. It makes your point, but it overcomes the problem of not doing this in the context of the other bids and how much money we've got to
Councillor
spend.
Newman, because I asked you that before, that you've been asked again, are you happy with, are you not willing to contemplate that?
I'll respond to the Mayor directly.
Yep.
The answer, Your Worship, is yes in the context of the first part of the amendment, because it is simply about trying to, as Councillor Fletcher has reflected, preserve the integrity of the OLI process with respect to the existing OLIs, and that will, I think, require an expansion of the overall envelope. Councillor Filipaina is utterly incorrect. This is not about slowing the proposal at Otara down, and this amendment doesn't seek to do that. But if we refer the matter for debate in the annual plan process, where I have some confidence that the Mayor will look favourably at the expansion of the envelope to accommodate Otara, as well as preserve the integrity of the existing OLIs, and that's fine.
Okay, right. So councillors, I'm going to speak to this now. I'm afraid I can't support this because we've just pointed out that at this stage it's not necessary to do anything with the OLI program overall allocation. It is a working feast. It's going to take some time, and to be honest, it's going to be the next LTP where we have a serious look at whether we need to do anything to increase the allocation. But I just want to give an analogy where we came up where Councillor Newman moved quite rightfully so, and got the approval of the council that we include Pukekohe in the Panuku work program, and it came in, you know, around the bend, the last horse, and got put in, and we didn't expand the Panuku work program or the allocation of money. We just added it as another unlock to be worked within that allocation. So I'm strongly suggesting, councillors, that we do not approve this amendment and just stick with the original, and then there will still be consideration of any extra money that is required for the OLI program going forward. I have Councillor Simpson.
I don't know if the OLI program budget needs to be expanded by 1.5 or 2.5 or 3.
Microphone, no, Councillor Simpson.
And aren't we just doing this next month anyway? So we're only a couple of weeks away, really. So, but I think where everyone's got to is a bit of a compromise, and I'm happy with the compromise. But it's absolutely, in my mind, from a process perspective, has to be part of the annual budget, because this is one of a number. And it may be that whole envelope isn't quite right. So we just need to check that out. But I'm happy with where it's landed as by way of a compromise. Thank you.
Councillor Halls.
So just clarification, the Mayor's recommendation and the Mayor's changes, we just seem to have gone a quick little circle. Are we putting the Mayor's, have we agreed the Mayor's changes in the...
it's just popped up, I didn't know, yeah.
Okay. Okay, because I think that...
So the mover and seconder are happy with the addition there.
I think that's a very worthy... Because I think,
right,
Mr.
okay.
Chair, your sentiments are correct, and we are in danger of losing the very big picture of our budget if we carry on sort of being ad hoc. This, however, brings it back into the process, and it's eminently sensible.
And we have, right, you want to speak to the original, though, you do? Yep. And, okay, you've got a question. Okay, yep. Go ahead.
Gentlemen, because of the multi-sports complex being, the money 1.5 has been targeted, and it's targeted for the annual budget 1920 to be incorporated. If there is a debate during the annual plan process and somehow the governing body or the committee of the whole declines to increase it by 1.5 million, because we don't know what's going to happen during the annual plan process, will the $1.5 million that Otara Papatoetoe local board are looking for get allocated?
So my interpretation of the amended resolution is that the decision is deferred until part of the annual plan process. So we're not resolving through that wording to grant the $1.5 million to Ngāti Otara today.
Right. So even though the Otara Papatoetoe question again, even though Otara Papatoetoe wanted the allocation today, that amendment is saying they will not get it, and that they, yes it is. Yes it is. This is what we've just heard, is that they will not get it today. We will have to go through the annual plan process and debate and discuss whether $1.5 million gets increased in the OLI according to this. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah.
Well, look, that's the question.
I agree with you, but anyway, Rob.
This is why I'm asking the question. Am I correct in assuming that?
That's as I say, that's how I would interpret the current wording of that resolution. If I could be so bold, I suspect what people are suggesting is that an alternative would be to approve the budget 1.5 million for this project and then debate whether to increase the overall budget for the OLI by 1.5 million as part of the annual plan process.
So, that's how I'd like to do it. Your Worship, I knew I was. Yeah, but look, so, Chair, that
was a great, yep. No, you.
Well, those are my questions, and I just think the suggestion is a good one.
Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. I think that was my question too. So maybe it's a question for the mover. The amendment up there basically says we're not approving it until we debate the increase. So my question is, well, okay, I'll have my debating point then, because I can't really ask any more questions. So if the amendment is sitting the way it is, I'll vote it down, because what unfortunately was going to be a really positive thing, the chair was here, she was really excited, was really positive moving forward from this point, approve the allocation of funding. That's the decision we were making. That the actual amendment, which is by replacement, maybe if there was a second amendment which took us forward to decide the other thing. But this actually says we need to debate this again and leaves the local board in the lurch, so that's disappointing.
Okay, well,
I'd be voting
approving the original would have been the good news story, but we are making a mountain out of this one from the molehill, and I've got member Taipuri.
Good, I'm probably going to sound like a breaking down record. I fully with Councillor Filipina. And, again, why can't you do what you set out to do, and that's make the contribution and then separately do something in another matter for annual plans? So why put them together, I don't know.
If you have a seconder, do you have a seconder for that? Member Taipuri? Okay, there's been a move to put the amendment. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Can I get some clarity? That you asked about a seconder for the amendment.
For the
and
to put the motion. To put the motion.
And I said yes.
To put the motion. Sorry, I thought it was you, Member Taipuri. It was Member Hanari. So we have a mover and a seconder to put the amendment now. The amendment be put. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No. Okay, well, we keep talking the way I'd read that. So we've got Councillor Bartley, but do you still want to talk or only to the original one? You're top on the list here if you want to ask questions.
Well, I'll speak to the amendment. I think it's really sad. I mean, how can you say that you support Otara Papatoetoe, this Ngāti Otara Park that's been, like this for ages, and it's one of the most vulnerable communities in Auckland. How can you say you support it and then try and put in place a gateway and a barrier to that happening? So I do not support this amendment. I can't see why we can't just support and give the 1.5 million. They're not saying that they want more. Each local board would hopefully have an allocation out of the 200 million. They're just saying change what our allocation could go to. So, that's just really sad what I saw just happen here. we should be supporting this Ngāti Otara Park, and I don't support this amendment. I would have supported the original if we went with it, but.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understood from the response the question I put to Mr. Cairns, that this would not change the urgency, and there is no intention of doing anything other than seeing the early advancement today of this proposal. What the issue was is preserving the integrity of the OLI budget and the work that the Mayor quite sensibly suggested in incorporating that into considerations with the budget. So I support and thought that we would be advancing that in accepting the Mayor's proposal. If it requires us to do an A and a B, then that is the logical way to proceed. And if you read in that, there was an additional 2 words inserted, if required. So it's not saying necessarily it will have to happen, it's just saying if it's required. So in the interest of common sense, given that everybody wants to see this project being fast-tracked today, could we have an A and a B? So the mover and the seconder of the...
Are awaiting.
So could please...
We can have an A and a B, but I think we want to actually...
Because I thought that's what we were sort of proceeding with the Mayor's sensible suggestion.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, the cleanest thing would have been just to vote A, but anyway.
No,
the Mayor is
Mr. Chairman, yeah, look, Councillor Filipaina is right. I was assuming that the red A becomes a B, and you just need to make that B and then put in place of approve, consider the expansion of the one local initiative, etc. So today we say, yes, we're putting the 1.5 million in. No reason to delay that at all. We ought to do it. It's justified. It should go through unanimously. And B, if there is a shortfall, then we can consider that within the context of the annual budget. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to get the mover and seconder are now going to take out approve, and I'm going to say consider. Yep.
If the mover and seconder accepts that change.
Yeah, that's what I'm just through the chair, everyone, and that's what we're trying to do here. Okay. We just get it right up there. And Councillor Cooper, do you wish to speak or ask a question? Question? Yep.
It'll be 3 million because that's what's really unclear here to me, all the way along. It's so wordy and
no, it would be considering whether we go from 200 million to 201.5 million is really what we're quibbling about here. I know. And we have Councillor Lee.
Asked if we inserted the words recommended to the meeting, the annual plan meeting, rather than be considered, which leaves things hanging, be recommended, so that it expresses, I guess, a will, if I hear everyone in the room, that they support this, but respects the process of the annual plan, so that it be recommended to the annual plan rather than be considered, which is a neutral word.
I'm happy with that. We'll put recommended if it meets everyone's approval.
Okay.
Chair, sorry, I got another question because I know I won't be able to
sort this one out first.
Yeah, well,
why not?
Why not?
Councillor Filipaina.
Because of what's been put up there. Thank you, Chair. Would it help? The question is that A stays as per the agenda, and then B, which Councillor Newman and Fletcher put up, which was and remove altogether the multi-sports complex out of it. It then allows, in the annual plan process, for us to debate whether to increase the program by 1.5, because if that's the case, it can be part of. the original recommendation, but the wording on our agenda should be still there. And hopefully that's the case, because there was something different that was put up there. So that's my question. Wouldn't it be better if we did that and then consider the expansion of the one local initiative by 1.5 as per B? Because I personally have no issue with that, and the seconder has no issue with that. That's, yeah, but it was
Okay,
different
so I'm
last time.
going to ask the movers to the amendment, are you happy we just fold this B into the original?
You okay with that?
Are we happy? Do you want to put it through as an amendment, or are you happy to fold it in with
approve the 1.5
A?
allocation of funding 2020?
People are misunderstanding the purpose of this. The purpose is to get the funding for Otara over the line, but to not compromise the integrity of the OLI process. Some of the stuff that I've heard today is bizarre. But anyway, whatever's going to get the consensus, but we need to ensure, because without question, we will be under pressure in the OLI's space. The funding that has been allocated won't be enough, and we have to get those OLIs over the line. And they have to be over the line in the form that broadly reflects what the local boards wanted, not what will come out of the gateway process led by staff.
Why can't we just let it be? Yeah, I'm getting some conflict. Yeah. Okay, so we need to move the amendment. Okay. Right, well, we're going to have B as an amendment, I'm afraid, so we're going to put that, we've got a mover and a seconder for B. So can we put up those names, please? Councillor Newman and Councillor Fletcher. And we're going to move the amendment. Yes, Councillor Lee.
Where it's...
Councillors, honestly, this is really making hard work out of this.
Yeah,
really
I'm trying to be helpful because there's two schools of thought about how to go about this. Everyone expresses support, and I just think that the word approve be changed to take on board the Mayor's concern, be changed to recommend, and that the amendment, at the start of the amendment in B, also the word approve should be changed to recommend. And then that gives the annual plan process a strong direction, but leaves the annual plan process intact. I'll just make those suggestions. I'm not going to formally move it.
Yep. Well, I must admit, I don't know what has happened to consider. Seems to have disappeared now. So, really...
That's good the way it is now.
Point of order. Sorry, Chair.
Right, now what we're going to do is we're going to put this
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Chair.
Akin to that point of order.
So,
thank you, Walker. Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yeah.
Alf.
Can you explain to me, in standing orders, why B could not be accepted by the original mover and seconder to be part of the substantive?
I would like to know the answer to that.
Oh, okay, well, that's the point.
Right, here we go.
Yes, it is.
You've had a question related to your son.
I know you haven't.
The question from Councillor Filipaina is why cannot B just be folded in with the original A?
Why couldn't? Yeah, sorry,
Mr. Chairman, as the seconder of this, and I do think
hold on,
this is becoming somewhat
let's
fussy.
deal with the point of order
I am
first.
happy for this to be incorporated.
Is that a point of order first? Point of order first.
I don't know what you all had for tea last night, but my goodness. So, Councillor Filipaina has asked the question of why B cannot just be put with A and we put it folded in.
So that, through the chair, that could be with the agreement of the meeting?
Yeah.
With the original mover and seconder, if that's the...
Because both the mover...
Right, my reading of it is everyone is in agreement, bar maybe a couple, but it doesn't matter. We're all good. The majority is in agreement. So we are going to take away Councillor Newman and Councillor Fletcher, and we're going to put B in with A, and we have a mover and a seconder. And we're going to get it up on the screen so there's no issues. Right. Just move it up a little bit higher so that we don't have that other red bit right at the top there. So we've got no confusion. Right, we've got the mover. Right, I'm going to put it, because I don't believe there's any further need for comment. So we've got... Okay, so you don't want to put it, Councillor?
I just want to talk
to okay, right. Okay. You can. Councillor Filipaini. Yep, Councillor Filipaini.
Chair, I'm not going to end up mentioning what we've just gone through because both the mover and seconder of that know what they've done. Chair, with this particular Otara Papatoe, and I just wanted to acknowledge again Councillors Watson and Member Henare around it. Otara Papatoe have been waiting for this for 20 years, and we just spent, I don't know how long, talking about whether to delay it or not. So look, Your Worship, I totally support this. When I joined the police in 1978, the first place I went to was Otara and Howick, believe it or not. And I know the Scorpions Club very well. I think when Apulu Rees Autanga Mawaya said he used to go onto the roof and collect the balls, I think I may have chased him in one of those times when they were on the roof, and I know I wouldn't have caught him. But with the photos that the local board put up there, in the men's toilet, when you go in there, they used to have a piece of aluminium as their mirror on there. The pipes between the two buildings are crap, and they've had to stick with that all this time. This now allows that community the ability to get something that they've asked for many, many years. Chair, I want to acknowledge also Tangaloa Willie Meyer. He is the chair of the Otara Scorpions, the club, and he's been part of this process for many, many years, even with the marae. I want to acknowledge Tangaloa, but also his committee, because, you know, Councillor Watson mentioned the cricket around where the money's going. I agree with you, Councillor Watson, that I'm hoping that the legacy fund that they had, the Heritage Fund, that Auckland Rugby League got for the sale of Carlaw Park, I hope some of that money makes its way through to the Otara Scorpions Club, because they deserve it. Chair and councillors and independent multi-statutory board members, both Member Taipari and Henare ended up talking about the marae. Well, I know, talking to Lotu, that they will be 100% behind any application, and if that local board can assist, they will. She promised that today, and I know that with the group that always meets around the multi-sports and the marae committee are also, and I know that the councillors and the Manuka Ward, myself and Whaana will be supporting any application as well, because it's important that that particular marae, the whare paku that's there, that's sinking, you know, that gets addressed as well as the kura. My last point, through you, Chair, my last point is that I want to acknowledge the local boards, not only last term, but especially this term, because, you know, they're one local initiative that they brought originally. And Chair, you said it, that they didn't have faith that their one local initiative was going to go through, hence not putting this particular project up for the Ollie. After talking, you know, with staff, but talking to Lotu, you can understand their reservation, but this should have been their one local initiative during the long-term plan process. So, Chair, I want to acknowledge everybody that's been involved with this. It's been a long time coming, and I look forward to going to the opening of the Otara Multi-Sports Complex, and the fact that the design, I want to acknowledge the staff and the design team and everybody that's been involved right from the beginning. The fact that they can build on top of what's going to be built there now, I think is crucial with all the sports that are currently using Ngāti Otara Park. So thank you.
All right. I'm going to put the motion that just as you mentioned, sorry, and I do have to pass this on because Councillor Cooper and myself are aware that Auckland Rugby League did actually come out and invest in all the rugby league clubs out west to it just in the last year or two. So I would have thought they would be doing the same in the south if they haven't done that. So I'm going to put the motion. We've got to move it, and we have a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No one. We're in agreement. We will have a little break till 12 o'clock.